Well, I think of you like a daughter, which is saying a lot, because I have 3 daughters, and one of them I don't even think of as a daughter.
Behind that iconic hat toss lurked one of television's most fascinating productions, where a cat couldn't meow on command. CBS demanded no divorced characters, and an innocent bystander became an accidental co-star. From rescue cats to reversed footage to elephant-crushed clowns, the beloved Minneapolis newsroom harbored secrets that would shock even Mary Richards herself. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Fact 1. The famous cat couldn't actually meow.
Last week we were a 1.1, and then we plummeted down to a 1.0.
Well, what does that mean? An entire family of midgets tuned us out?
The adorable orange tabby cat that became one of television's most recognizable mascots had a surprising secret that would have made any Hollywood agent nervous. Mimsy, the star of the MTM Enterprises logo that appeared at the end of every Mary Tyler Moore Show episode, simply refused to meow when the cameras were rolling, creating a major problem for the production company that had built their entire brand identity around this furry little performer. MTM Enterprises, founded by Mary Tyler Moore and her husband Grant Tinker in 1969, deliberately chose Mimsy as their mascot in a playful tribute to the famous MGM lion that roared at the beginning of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer films. The concept was perfect. Instead of a mighty lion's roar, viewers would get a sweet kitten's meow to end each episode on a charming note. There was just one major hitch in this plan. Mimsy absolutely would not cooperate with the film crew when they needed her to perform her signature sound. The rescue cat, who had been adopted from an animal shelter by one of the MTM production staff members, proved to be completely camera-shy when it came to vocalizing on command. No matter what tricks the crew tried or how many takes they attempted, Mimsy would simply sit there silently, looking adorable but stubbornly mute. The production team faced a real dilemma because the entire MTM logo concept depended on that final meow to complete the parody of the MGM trademark. The creative solution came when someone noticed that Mimsy would occasionally yawn during filming sessions. The crew captured footage of one of these yawns, then played the film in reverse to make it look like she was opening her mouth to vocalize. They added a separate meow sound effect in post-production, creating the illusion that viewers had been hearing Mimsy's actual voice all along. This reversed yawning footage became the foundation for the MTM logo that would appear thousands of times over the years. Fact 2. CBS's bizarre 4 forbidden things rule.
Why don't we all write out on slips of paper what we feel the main drawback of the show is, and then have them read anonymously?
Why anonymously?
So that Ted's feelings won't be hurt.
When show creators Alan Burns and James Brooks first pitched The Mary Tyler Moore Show to CBS executives in the late 1960s, they received one of the most bizarre and specific lists of television taboos ever documented in Hollywood history. According to Burns, CBS executives bluntly informed them that American audiences simply would not tolerate 4 particular elements on television: people from New York, divorce, Jewish characters, and mustaches. This strange quartet of forbidden topics emerged during the early development meetings when Burns and Brooks were still crafting their vision for what would become one of television's most groundbreaking sitcoms. The original concept featured Mary Richards as a recently divorced woman starting fresh in a new city, which immediately triggered concerns from network executives who worried that divorce was still too controversial for mainstream television audiences in 1970. The CBS executives' reasoning behind their peculiar list reflected the conservative television landscape of the early 1970s, when networks were extremely cautious about anything that might offend viewers or advertisers. The ban on New York characters stemmed from a belief that middle American audiences would find East Coast personalities too abrasive or sophisticated, while the prohibition against Jewish characters and divorce reflected broader social anxieties of the era. Despite these restrictive guidelines, Burns and Brooks found creative ways to work around most of the network's demands while still maintaining the integrity of their vision. They kept the character of Rhoda Morgenstern, Mary's best friend, who was clearly from New York and portrayed by Jewish actress Valerie Harper, proving that CBS's fears were largely unfounded when audiences embraced the character wholeheartedly. The creators did concede on the divorce issue, changing Mary's backstory from a recent divorcee to a woman recovering from a broken engagement, though this change also stemmed from concerns that viewers might think Mary had divorced Dick Van Dyke's character from Moore's previous show. Interestingly, the mustache prohibition seems to have been the most universally ignored rule in television history, as countless shows from that era featured mustachioed characters without any apparent audience backlash. Fact 3. The confused lady was never supposed to be there.
I'd like to give you a chance to atone for hanging up on me today and do a service for mankind at the same time.
She already did a service for mankind by hanging up on you.
One of the most memorable faces in television history belongs to a woman who had absolutely no idea she was being filmed and thought she was witnessing a potential tragedy unfolding on a busy Minneapolis street. Hazel Frederick, an 88-year-old local resident, became an accidental television star when she wandered into the background of Mary Tyler Moore's iconic hat toss scene, creating one of the most analyzed moments in sitcom opening credits. On a cold day in 1969, Frederick was enjoying her day off from work and decided to do some shopping at Dayton's department store in downtown Minneapolis. As she walked along Nicollet Avenue, she noticed a crowd gathering, and her natural curiosity drew her closer to see what was happening. What she discovered was a young woman standing in the middle of the street, seemingly preparing to throw her hat into the air for no apparent reason. Frederick had no knowledge that a television production crew was filming the opening sequence for what would become one of America's most beloved sitcoms. And the crew was using hidden equipment to capture the scene as naturally as possible without disrupting normal street activity. From Frederick's perspective, she was simply watching a confused young woman who appeared to be in some kind of distress or danger, standing in traffic and behaving erratically. The expression that television audiences would see for decades was actually Frederick's genuine concern for Mary Tyler Moore's safety and well-being. As Moore later explained, Frederick had no idea what was happening and never saw a camera, so she just thought there was a lunatic about to lose her life in the middle of the street. Frederick's worried, slightly judgmental stare became frozen in television history, appearing behind Moore in countless reruns. The mystery of the concerned woman's identity remained unsolved for 27 years until 1996, when Moore returned to Minneapolis to promote her memoir. Frederick finally decided to introduce herself, delighting Moore so much that she immediately pulled the elderly woman onto the stage and declared her to be her co-star. Fact 4. Mary almost had a tattoo removal instead of surgery.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to speak to you about that.
Yes.
Don't do it again.
Mary Tyler Moore's personal values and religious beliefs directly influenced one of the show's storylines when writers originally planned to have her character undergo a very different type of medical procedure that would have been quite scandalous for early 1970s television. The original script called for Mary Richards to have a tattoo removed, which would have made The Mary Tyler Moore Show one of the first sitcoms to acknowledge that respectable single women might have gotten tattoos in their younger, more rebellious days. When Moore read the script and discovered that her character would be visiting the hospital to have an old tattoo surgically removed, she immediately objected to the storyline and refused to film the episode as written. Moore's reasoning was deeply personal and reflected her strong Catholic upbringing and the values that shaped both her private life and her public image as America's sweetheart from The Dick Van Dyke Show. Moore told the writers and producers that she was a good Catholic girl and simply couldn't play a character who had gotten a tattoo, even if that tattoo was now being removed as a sign of Mary's more mature judgment. In the early 1970s, tattoos were still heavily associated with sailors, bikers, and other groups that were considered outside mainstream society. And Moore felt that having Mary Richards reveal a hidden tattoo would fundamentally change how audiences viewed the character's wholesome background. The show's creative team respected Moore's concerns and quickly rewrote the episode to feature a much more conventional medical procedure that wouldn't challenge anyone's perception of Mary's character. Instead of tattoo removal, the revised script had Mary undergoing a tonsillectomy, which was a completely routine and unremarkable surgical procedure that many adults experienced without any social stigma attached. This behind-the-scenes change demonstrates how much influence Moore had over her character's development, and how carefully the show's creators worked to maintain the balance between pushing social boundaries and keeping Mary Richards relatable to mainstream American audiences who weren't ready for certain revelations about their beloved television heroine. Fact 5. Betty White was cast for being sickeningly sweet.
Why, I've gotten cheers by just simply cutting a ribbon at a supermarket opening.
Well, that's because they didn't think you could do it.
Betty White landed one of her most memorable television roles through what might be the most direct casting process in Hollywood history, when the Mary Tyler Moore Show writers literally used her name as shorthand for the exact personality they wanted to bring to their new character. When the creative team was developing the role of Sue Ann Nivens, the host of the fictional Happy Homemaker show on WJMTV, script number 73 contained a character description that called for an icky sweet Betty White type to play the seemingly perfect television hostess. The character of Sue Ann Nivens was designed to be a sharp contrast between public persona and private personality, appearing as the ideal homemaker on television while actually being manipulative, sexually aggressive, and competitive behind the scenes. The writers needed an actress who could convincingly portray that sickeningly sweet television personality that audiences would immediately recognize as a familiar type from daytime programming of the early 1970s. Rather than conducting a traditional casting search for someone who could approximate Betty White's well-established television persona, the casting director made the logical suggestion to simply approach White herself about taking the role. This decision created some anxiety among the producers because White was already close personal friends with Mary Tyler Moore and her husband Grant Tinker, who was also the head of MTM Enterprises. The friendship between Moore and White made the producers hesitant to audition White for the part, since they were genuinely concerned about the potential awkwardness that might develop if White wasn't right for the role, and they had to reject her. The professional relationship between Moore and White, combined with White's marriage to Alan Ludden and their social circle, meant that a failed audition could have created uncomfortable personal situations. Fortunately, White proved to be absolutely perfect for the role when she auditioned, delivering a performance that was so fully formed and defined that the producers immediately knew they had found their Sue Ann Nivens. White's first appearance was originally intended to be a one-time guest spot, but her performance was so compelling that she quickly became a series regular. Fact 6. The show used TV's first gay reference.
When did you last see it?
See what?
Whatever it is we're looking for. If it's gum, I just found it.
The Mary Tyler Moore Show quietly made television history during its third season when it became the first scripted program to use the word gay in reference to homosexuality, breaking new ground in an era when such topics were completely taboo on mainstream television. According to cast members Valerie Harper and Cloris Leachman, who confirmed this milestone during a 2013 interview on the television show The Doctors, this groundbreaking moment occurred in the episode titled My Brother's Keeper. The historic moment happened during a conversation between Harper's character, Rhoda Morgenstern, and Leachman's character, Phyllis Lindstrom, when Rhoda directly tells Phyllis that her brother is gay. This simple statement represented a massive shift in how television addressed topics related to sexual orientation, as most shows from that era either avoided the subject entirely or used coded language and euphemisms that allowed audiences to draw their own conclusions without explicit acknowledgement. The context of this linguistic breakthrough is particularly significant when considering the conservative television landscape of the early 1970s, when network censors routinely rejected storylines and dialogue that might be considered controversial or offensive to mainstream American audiences. Homosexuality was rarely discussed openly in any media format, and when it was addressed, it was typically through negative stereotypes or tragic storylines that reinforced social prejudices. The Mary Tyler Moore Show's approach to this topic reflected the program's broader commitment to addressing real social issues through the lens of comedy and human relationships, rather than avoiding difficult subjects that were part of many viewers' actual experiences. The show's writers and producers had already demonstrated their willingness to tackle controversial topics like premarital relationships, workplace discrimination against women, and other subjects that pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable on television. This linguistic milestone occurred without fanfare or special attention, which was likely intentional on the part of the show's creators, who understood that treating such topics as normal parts of everyday conversation was more effective than creating special episodes that highlighted their progressive stance. Fact 7. Ed Asner forgot his winning audition performance.
Where is he then?
Well, he's down the hall. He stopped to sign an autograph. Might take him a while, though. He was still explaining who he is.
Ed Asner nearly sabotaged his own chances of landing the role that would define his career when he completely forgot what he had done during his successful first audition for Lou Grant and delivered a wildly different performance during his callback with Mary Tyler Moore. Asner had impressed the casting directors enough during his initial audition to earn a second meeting. But when the producers asked him to recreate the exact same performance that had won them over, he realized he had absolutely no memory of what he had actually done. The situation became even more complicated when Asner was brought back to read scenes with Moore herself, which was a crucial step in the casting process, since the chemistry between Mary Richards and Lou Grant would be essential to the show's success. Instead of attempting to guess what his original approach had been, Asner decided to throw caution to the wind and deliver what he later described as going all Mashugana during the reading. Asner's second audition performance was so dramatically different from his first that it created immediate concern among everyone in the room, including Moore herself, who had expected to see the actor who had impressed the producers just days earlier. The erratic and over-the-top delivery that Asner gave during this crucial callback was so far removed from the controlled, gruff character they envisioned for Lou Grant that Moore openly questioned whether he was the right choice for the role. After Asner finished his chaotic reading with Moore, she turned to producers Alan Burns and James Brooks and directly asked them if they were sure about their casting decision. The awkward moment highlighted how much Asner's second performance had missed the mark and created doubt about whether he could actually deliver the kind of consistent characterization the show would require. However, the producers had been so impressed with Asner's original audition that they decided to trust their first instincts rather than being swayed by his callback mishap. They boldly told Moore that Asner was definitely her Lou Grant, and their confidence in his abilities proved to be completely justified once filming began. Fact 8. The house owners fought tourism with politics.
Are you having Rhoda for dinner again?
No.
Oh, I see. But you have a place setting for two.
Yeah, that's right. You see, sometimes I like to switch places in mid-meal.
The real-life owners of the Victorian house used for exterior shots of Mary Richards' apartment became so overwhelmed by enthusiastic fans that they resorted to making a bold political statement to discourage television crews and tourists from continuing to film and visit their property. The 1892 Queen Anne Victorian home, located at 2104 Kenwood Parkway in Minneapolis, had been chosen by the show's location scouts as the perfect backdrop for Mary's fictional address at 119 North Weatherly. Once the Mary Tyler Moore Show became a hit and fans discovered the actual location where the exterior shots had been filmed, the house quickly transformed from a quiet residential property into an unofficial tourist attraction that disrupted the owners' peaceful daily lives. According to Mary Tyler Moore herself, the woman who lived in the house was completely overwhelmed by the constant stream of visitors who would show up at all hours of the day and night, knocking on the door and asking if Mary was around, apparently believing that the fictional character actually lived there. The situation became even more challenging when television production crews began arriving regularly to film additional footage of the house for various purposes, treating the private residence as if it were a public filming location that they could access whenever needed. The homeowners found themselves dealing with professional film equipment, crew members, and the associated disruption that came with ongoing television production in their neighborhood. In a creative act of rebellion, the frustrated property owners decided to place a prominent "Impeach Nixon" sign directly beneath the third-floor window that was supposed to be Mary Richards' apartment. This politically charged message served multiple purposes. It would make any future exterior shots unusable for the wholesome family sitcom, and it sent a clear message that the residents had strong political opinions that might not align with the show's mainstream appeal. The political protest sign effectively accomplished its goal, as production crews stopped filming additional footage of the house, though dedicated fans continued to make pilgrimages to the location for decades after the show ended, with multiple tour buses still arriving daily more than 10 years after the final episode aired. Fact 9. Valerie Harper almost lost the role for being too pretty.
I'm sorry that I'm almost late, but I had a flat tire, and it slowed me up a lot driving on it.
You didn't stop to change it?
Oh, no, that would have made me very late.
Valerie Harper came dangerously close to losing what would become her breakout television role because producers felt she was simply too attractive to convincingly portray Mary Richards' supposedly frumpy and unlucky-in-love best friend, Rhoda Morgenstern. The casting team had spent considerable time searching for the right actress to play Mary's upstairs neighbor, auditioning more than 50 different women who could deliver the sharp wit and New York attitude that the character required, while also fitting their vision of someone who would believably struggle with dating and self-confidence issues. Harper's audition performance was absolutely perfect from an acting standpoint, capturing exactly the kind of brash, sarcastic personality that the writers had envisioned for Rhoda. But her natural beauty created a significant problem for the show's creators, who were concerned about the believability of the character dynamics. According to co-creator Alan Burns, Harper was something they never expected the part to be, which was someone as attractive as she was, and this unexpected physical appeal threatened to undermine the entire premise of Rhoda's character as written. The original concept for Rhoda Morgenstern centered around her being the kind of woman who would serve as a contrast to Mary's more conventional attractiveness, with Rhoda's dating difficulties and self-deprecating humor stemming partly from her supposed lack of traditional beauty. If the actress playing Rhoda was obviously stunning, then her complaints about her appearance and her romantic struggles would seem artificial and unconvincing to television audiences. Fortunately, director Jay Sandrich strongly believed that Harper was absolutely right for the role despite the appearance concerns, and he convinced the producers to give her a second chance with a different approach to the character's look. For Harper's callback audition, Sandrich suggested that she come in without any makeup whatsoever, allowing her natural features to appear more ordinary under the harsh studio lighting. The strategy worked perfectly, and the producers immediately changed their minds about Harper's suitability for the role, though they decided to address the beauty issue through costume design by deliberately dressing Rhoda in ungainly, unflattering clothing that would downplay Harper's attractiveness throughout the series. Fact 10. The newsroom clocks never actually worked.
You didn't let somebody into my office, did you?
Mr. Grant, I am the associate producer. And I'm just a little too busy to keep people out of your...
Sharp-eyed viewers who paid close attention to the background details of the WJM-TV newsroom set might have noticed something peculiar about the timepieces that were supposed to help the news staff keep track of their busy broadcast schedule throughout the show's 7-year run. The clocks mounted on the wall behind Mary Richards' and Murray Slaughter's desks were completely non-functional props that never displayed the correct time and had second hands that remained frozen in place throughout every single episode. This detail becomes particularly noticeable when watching multiple episodes in sequence, as observant fans can spot the same clock positions appearing again and again, regardless of what time of day the scene was supposed to be taking place, or how much time had supposedly passed within the episode's storyline. The static nature of these timepieces created several continuity errors throughout the series, as the characters would reference specific times or deadlines, while the background clocks displayed completely different and unchanging times. The decision to use non-working clocks was likely a practical choice made by the set designers and production team, who prioritized visual consistency over functional accuracy when creating the newsroom environment. Working clocks would have required constant monitoring and adjustment between takes to ensure that they displayed appropriate times for each scene, adding an unnecessary layer of complexity to an already demanding television production schedule. The irony of having broken clocks in a television newsroom setting is particularly amusing, given that news programs are entirely dependent on precise timing for everything from commercial breaks to live broadcasts. Real television newsrooms typically feature multiple working clocks showing different time zones and countdown timers for various program elements, making the WJM newsroom's decorative timepieces seem somewhat unrealistic. Despite this minor set decoration oversight, most viewers never noticed the non-functional clocks during the show's original broadcasts, as television screens were much smaller and the picture quality was significantly lower than modern viewing conditions that make such background details more visible to contemporary audiences watching on high-definition displays. Fact 11. Mary's husband secretly appeared in credits.
I may be having Prince Charles on my show.
Oh, Mary. Oh, you and he would make a wonderful pair. If only you weren't so old, American, and common.
Mary Tyler Moore's real-life husband made a secret cameo appearance in every single episode of The Mary Tyler Moore Show, without viewers ever realizing they were seeing one of the most powerful men in television during the 1970s. Grant Tinker, who was not only Moore's spouse but also the co-founder and president of MTM Enterprises, appeared regularly in the show's closing credits as Mary's anonymous date in a romantic scene that was filmed specifically to suggest that Mary Richards had an active social life beyond what audiences saw in the episodes. The closing credit sequence featured several brief scenes of the cast members, along with their names displayed at the bottom of the screen. But one particular shot showed Mary Richards holding hands with a mysterious gentleman while walking away from the camera. This romantic image was designed to reinforce the idea that Mary was successfully dating and enjoying her independence as a single woman in Minneapolis, even though viewers rarely saw her romantic relationships develop into anything serious during the actual episodes. Tinker's participation in these closing credits was kept deliberately secret through careful camera work that only showed him from behind, ensuring that his face was never visible to television audiences who might have recognized him from his prominent position in the entertainment industry. The decision to film Tinker from the rear was a practical choice that allowed the production to include this personal touch without creating any confusion about his role in the show or his relationship to the star. The romantic hand-holding scene remained in the closing credits throughout the show's entire 7-year run, even after other elements of the credit sequence were updated or changed to reflect cast departures and new additions. This meant that Tinker appeared in more episodes of The Mary Tyler Moore Show than many of the show's actual guest stars, though his contribution went completely unnoticed by audiences who had no idea they were watching the behind-the-scenes power couple enjoying a private moment that was hidden in plain sight. Fact 12. The show's Elephant Death episode won an Emmy. One of the Mary Tyler Moore Show's most beloved episodes centered around the absurdly tragic death of a children's television character, and went on to win the Emmy Award for Outstanding Writing for a comedy series, while being hailed by critics as one of the finest episodes in television history. Chuckles Bites the Dust, which aired on October 25, 1975, tackled the weighty subject of death and grief through the lens of workplace humor in a way that had never been attempted on a sitcom before. The episode's plot revolves around the bizarre demise of Chuckles the Clown, a frequently mentioned but rarely seen character who hosted a children's program on WJMTV and was known for his various costume characters, including Peter Peanut, Mr. Fee-Fi-Fo, Billy Banana, and Aunt Yoo-Hoo. When Chuckles is asked to serve as Grand Marshal for a circus parade after Ted Baxter is forbidden from participating, he decides to appear in his Peter Peanut costume, which leads to the fatal encounter with a rogue elephant that mistakes him for an actual peanut and attempts to shell him. The genius of the episode lies in how it handles the newsroom staff's reaction to this ridiculous death, with Lou Grant, Murray Slaughter, and Sue Ann Nivens making endless jokes about the circumstances, while Mary Richards scolds them for being disrespectful to the deceased. The situation becomes even more complex when Mary attends Chuckles' funeral and finds herself unable to control her laughter during the eulogy, despite having been the most vocal critic of her colleagues' inappropriate humor. The episode was written by David Lloyd and directed by Joan Darling, who found her directing career significantly boosted by the critical acclaim this episode received. The combination of Mary Tyler Moore's masterful performance as she struggles between propriety and uncontrollable giggles, along with the episode's thoughtful exploration of how people cope with death through humor, created a television moment that perfectly balanced comedy with genuine human emotion and earned widespread recognition from both critics and industry peers. Fact 13. Mimsy the cat died on a hospital bed on TV. The beloved MTM Enterprises mascot experienced one of the most disturbing and memorable endings in television history, when the final episode of St. Elsewhere featured Mimsy lying unconscious on a hospital bed connected to life support equipment, with viewers forced to watch as the famous orange tabby flatlined on screen in a shocking twist that traumatized audiences who had grown attached to the adorable cat over nearly 2 decades of television appearances. The St. Elsewhere series finale, which aired on May 25, 1988, took the show's hospital setting to its logical extreme by showing Mimsy as a patient rather than her usual appearance as a healthy, cheerful mascot in the traditional MTM logo format. Throughout the final credits, viewers could see Mimsy lying motionless on a hospital bed with various medical equipment attached to her small body, including an intravenous line and heart monitoring devices that produced audible beeping sounds over the show's closing theme music. The disturbing imagery continued throughout the entire credit sequence, with the heart monitor providing a steady rhythm that reminded viewers that they were watching a beloved television icon in critical condition, rather than enjoying the usual light-hearted ending to an MTM production. The producers deliberately prolonged this uncomfortable scene, forcing audiences to confront the reality of mortality in a way that was completely unprecedented for a production company logo. The finale reached its devastating climax after the credits finished rolling, when the company name appeared on screen and the heart monitor suddenly emitted a long, high-pitched flatline tone that marked Mimsy's death and the symbolic end of St. Elsewhere itself. The timing of this fictional death proved to be eerily prophetic, as the real Mimsy died in June of 1988 at the age of 20, just weeks after this disturbing logo variation aired on national television. This macabre version of the MTM logo was so upsetting to viewers that it is rarely shown in reruns, with most broadcast versions of the St. Elsewhere finale replacing it with the standard MTM logo to avoid traumatizing audiences who expected the usual cheerful kitten meow. Fact 14. The WJM building had impossible architecture.
I know I shouldn't ask this, but just what kind of a comedy act do you do?
I do a ventriloquist act.
No kidding. Whose knee do you sit on?
The WJM TV newsroom existed in a building with completely impossible architecture that defied basic laws of physics and construction, creating a continuity error that persisted throughout the show's entire 7-year run without most viewers ever noticing the glaring inconsistency between exterior shots and interior sets. The establishing shots of the fictional television station consistently showed a multi-story office building with numerous windows facing the street, suggesting that the newsroom would have natural light and views of downtown Minneapolis from multiple directions. However, when viewers saw the actual newsroom set, where Mary Richards, Murray Slaughter, and the rest of the WJM staff worked every day, the space was completely enclosed with solid walls and no windows whatsoever, except for Lou Grant's private office, which contained the only window in the entire newsroom area. This architectural impossibility meant that the exterior shots and interior sets could never have belonged to the same building, as there was no way to reconcile the windowed facade shown from outside with the windowless workspace shown from inside. The situation became even more absurd when considering Lou Grant's office window, which was supposed to provide him with a view befitting his status as news director, but actually opened onto nothing more than a brick wall. This meant that even the single window that did exist in the newsroom provided no natural light, no view of the city, and no connection to the outside world that would be essential for a television news operation that needed to stay connected to current events. The windowless newsroom created practical advantages for the television production, as the set designers didn't need to worry about matching exterior lighting conditions or providing convincing views of Minneapolis. But it also made the workspace feel somewhat claustrophobic and unrealistic compared to actual television newsrooms, which typically feature large windows and open layouts that allow for natural light and visual connection to the community they serve. This architectural inconsistency reflects the practical realities of television production during the 1970s, when matching exterior and interior shots was less of a priority than creating functional filming spaces that could accommodate cameras and lighting equipment. Fact 15. Mary said Porky Pig's catchphrase in one logo.
Hey, Gordy, what's your latest temperature reading?
20 minutes ago, it was up 2 degrees.
Well, what does that make it now?
101. I've been running a fever all day.
Well, that's one way of keeping warm. And that's another way.
Mary Tyler Moore made a surprising appearance in her own production company's logo for one special episode, replacing the usual Mimsy the cat and delivering the famous Porky Pig catchphrase that had been ending Looney Tunes cartoons for decades. Episode 71 of The Mary Tyler Moore Show, titled Put on a Happy Face, featured this unique variation of the MTM Enterprises logo, where viewers saw Moore herself sitting in the familiar circular ribbon instead of the orange tabby cat they had grown accustomed to seeing. Instead of Mimsy's typical meow, Moore delivered Porky Pig's iconic stuttered farewell with the line, "That's all, folks," which had been the standard closing for Warner Brothers' Looney Tunes cartoons from 1937 to 1946. This crossover between MTM Enterprises and Warner Brothers Animation created an unexpected moment of television history, where a live-action sitcom star borrowed one of animation's most recognizable catchphrases for her own show's closing credits. The decision to use this particular Porky Pig reference was not random, as the stuttered catchphrase had actually been spoken by Mary Richards during the episode itself, making the logo variation a direct callback to dialogue that viewers had just heard within the show's storyline. This connection between the episode content and the closing logo created a seamless integration that felt like a natural extension of the episode rather than an arbitrary substitution. The MTM logo was famous for its custom variations that reflected the themes and tones of different shows produced by the company, with Mimsy appearing in various costumes and situations depending on the program. but having the company's founder and star appear personally in the logo was an extremely rare occurrence that demonstrated Moore's willingness to participate directly in the playful traditions that had become part of MTM's corporate identity. This Warner Brothers reference also represented the kind of cross-studio humor that was less common during the 1970s, when television networks and production companies typically maintained stricter boundaries about referencing competitors' intellectual property.